This conversation is with Chris Kozak, a 31-year veteran of the fire service. Welcome to the Burnout Podcast. I am your host, Skip O. This podcast is brought to you by Throttle and Thrive and mypodcast.media. Let me talk to you a little bit more about Throttle and Thrive. It's a treatment facility in California. It's a 6-bed unit for men only, first responders. They have a workout facility. They have a 12-step program that they take people to. And they also specialize in their diets. If they have a special diet they need to cater to, they can do that also. They practice with EMDR and talk therapy. It's a very family-like atmosphere. Their focus is to rescue the rescuers. You can go to their website, throttleandthrive.com. You can also call them at 805-701-1309. That's 805-701-1309. And you can also look at the show notes for more information. Chris Kozak is a 31-year veteran of the fire service, 26 years of full-time service in the suburbs of Chicago. Chris is married to Rhonda and has 5 adult children. Chris loves outdoors activities and likes to have fun. You want to let everybody know a little bit where you work at, family background, and then we'll go into your story.
So I'm 49 years old. I work for Lockport Fire Department in Illinois. We're one of the more southern suburbs of Chicago. 6-station department. 11,500 calls last year, which for some reason we keep going up every year, about 5%, since I started working there. I've been on that. I'll be on the department 26 years come May, and then I'll be retiring about 1 year from now. Just haven't figured out the exact date yet, but it'll probably be March of next year. And ready to move on and start the next chapter.
I tell you, retirement's pretty nice.
I haven't heard anybody say they don't like it yet, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Chris, I tell you what, you're one of those old guys on the fire department, but what inspired you to be a firefighter?
Well, I wanted to be a police officer when I was younger, to be quite honest. So I started, that was the path I was going down in high school, and then started taking college classes to be a police officer. I wanted to be in public service. I always liked helping people. I didn't know how, didn't really know what the path was to get there. So me and a buddy of mine one night ran into a volunteer fireman in a town we lived in, and we just asked him, how to get on the department. And it was a matter of, he goes, you should apply tomorrow because that's the deadline for the applications. So we did, and we got accepted. We thought we were king of the world because we got accepted in the fire department. Turns out they would have taken anybody who applied, but we joined, went through the fire academy. And I started hanging around the firehouse and stuff to get through the academy and learn what I had to do. And talking to the guys that were working there, I found out, well, you can actually do this as a career. And it was, I was having a lot of fun doing it, and with the guys and everything. It was like a new family.
Sure.
These people, they bring you in, they accept you, they teach you, they help you. It was amazing experience. So I was like, I want to do this instead. So I switched from law enforcement to the fire service and started taking all the classes for that. The department I was on at the time, they paid for everything because they were mostly volunteer or paid on call, whatever you want to call it. So they would send you to school so that you could help them out. So I got all my education from them, and then started testing to be full-time. I actually got hired on that department, and then the following day got hired on the department I'm on now. So that was 26 years ago, and it's been a good career. I've had my struggles throughout, and I don't think the career helped that. I don't know that I could say it contributed to it solely, but it was a lot of stuff, and that helped.
When you got on the department, and was there any kind of peer support, or do you guys have the classes what to expect going on in these runs, or the job if you're as far as getting up at 2 a.m, going out or whatever? Did they prepare you any for that?
No.
Okay.
Back then, that wasn't even a concern. You just did your job, and that was it. And they taught you how to do the job. There was no feelings that you could have about it, or it was that probably started coming up maybe about 5-10 years into when I started. They started doing the what I call them, like the hot washes after an incident, the CISDs, the critical incident stress debriefings.
TISM.
Yeah. So they started, they would do that. They would, if you got a bad call, they would offer that. And, all the guys would be like, no, I'm fine. I don't want, nobody wanted to admit that anything was bothering them because that was frowned upon back then. So even if you had that, from what I understand, I never sat through one, but most of the guys who sat in those said they didn't help. People would say stuff and everybody would just sit there and not say anything back. So I think it's evolved a lot from there to where it is today. And just today, like our department, and we've had some incidents. So we lost a firefighter to suicide. We've had, myself included, a couple other people with suicide attempts, and we had another fireman who wanted to get some help because he was having suicidal thoughts for a long time. So since all that, our department that I'm on now has taken a pretty proactive approach to trying to get ahead of the mental health aspect. We do talk to our new people that come in the door. There is a day dedicated to that will have one of our peer supporters come in and talk to them and explain to them exactly what you're talking about. The rough calls, the rough nights, the lack of sleep. We talk about all that stuff and tell them it's okay to ask for help. It's a physical injury. Treat it like any other physical injury. If you're hurting, tell somebody. No different than if you broke your leg, you would tell somebody. Everybody's not there yet, but it's definitely getting better.
Sure.
I know I personally will talk about my experiences openly at work just to let everybody know that I'm not afraid to talk about it, and it's okay to not be okay.
Well, since you said you're not afraid to talk about it, let's talk about that experience leading up like a few months before your incident.
So back in 2020, well, it probably started more in 2019, and I didn't realize this at the time. But looking back, I started isolating a lot, started drinking more. I was really depressed, and I was angry all the time. Didn't know why. Wasn't my fault, obviously. It was everybody else. And then February 19th of 2020, I went over to a buddy's house for a little while. We had a few beers and stuff. I wasn't intoxicated or anything like that. Came home early because I had to work the next day. And I got in an argument with my wife. And I had a prescription for Ambien at the time because I always had a hard time sleeping because of everything going on in my head, apparently. So I took the Ambien, and then things kind of spiraled out of control. I don't remember much after that. However, I woke up in an intensive care unit in the town I live in, and it was probably February 22nd or 23rd when I woke up. My fire chief was in the room, my best friend was in the room, my wife was in the room, and I had no idea what happened. At that time, they told me I attempted suicide, and they explained to me, my wife explained to me what I did. She's the one who she found me. We got in an argument. I left the bedroom. I didn't come back, so she came looking for me. She found me in the garage of my truck, with the truck running, the garage closed up, drinking and taking pills. I probably took about 50 more of those Ambien, I guess, with some alcohol. I don't remember doing any of that, but all the signs are there that I did it. So woke up in the hospital. I didn't know what was going on. I was very confused. A lot of emotions going on at that time. I was scared. I had no idea what was in store for me. From the hospital, they sent me to their mental hospital on the campus there, where I spent 5 days. That was a scary experience because we take people there. We don't go there ourselves.
Sure.
I was scared to death to go in that place. I'd never been inside of it. I just knew what it was. So they took me in there, and I got situated, and I was kind of an odd situation because I was 45 years old at the time. And they do groups. They have a group of under 40 and over 40. or 45, I think was the cutoff actually. And I was right there. So they were like, we don't know what group to put you in. And so put me in the group with the older people. I don't want to be in a group with all the younger people. They said, well, we put you in a group with the younger people. I said, okay. They said, well, the older people, they said they're really old. They said they literally sit around and sing Kumbaya and stuff like that. That's not going to help you. So I went in with the younger people. And at that facility, that wasn't really helping me either. These are people that I take to the hospital. These are my patients. Literally, one of the girls that I was not at that facility with, but afterwards, I've ran into her on calls at her apartment. So it wasn't a good place for me to be. My fire chief at the time, he wanted me to go to the IAFF Center of Excellence in Maryland, which is a facility for firemen who are in the IAFF only. You have to be in the International Association of Firefighters to get accepted into this facility. And there they have a bunch of clinicians and doctors, and they focus on helping first responders with their traumas that I didn't even know I had. I spent 28 days there, and I got a lot out of it. I really should have stayed longer.
Let's go back to you first arriving at the Center of Excellence. How was you feeling walking into that place?
Scared to death. I did not want to be there. I got there in the evening, and they'd already eaten dinner and all that stuff. So they brought me food and all that, but they take it back to a room where they start processing it and taking your vitals and all that. And I was just like, I felt like I was going to jail, to be honest with you, in the beginning. And then once you get through that process, they put me up into the holding area, basically, until they have a room for you. And I met a couple of people there, a couple of firemen that also came in that day. One of them has become a very good friend of mine. And then kind of got the rundown from him how things went. So the next day I could kind of start figuring out what I have to do. And at that place, they kind of leave it up to you to figure out what to do. They don't give you all the information. And I think it's on purpose. It's to get you to engage other people there and start working towards what you need to work towards. So I hung out with this guy and got to know some other people. And I met Skip. And as the days went on, you start to feel like I'm not alone. There's a lot of guys going through the same things I'm going through. There was another guy there that, when we were telling our stories, we could have flip-flopped each other's shoes, and we were in the same exact situation as each other from completely different parts of the country. It was very comforting to know that everybody there had something going on, but the biggest thing was everybody treated you like family, no matter where you were from, what department you were from, or what kind of department you were from. There's guys there from really big, busy departments to departments. Their whole department has as many guys as one shift at my department. So there's a lot of disparity there, which is good.
So when you got there and you said you was full of fear and stuff, and you started clicking in, when did it switch? Like from, man, I do got some hope and I'm not alone. Was there a time frame in that 28 days that there was it just switched and something happened?
Yeah, I would say partially. I started getting hope probably about 2 weeks into it. I started seeing, okay, people do leave here. They are, you start seeing how people are changing throughout the time from when you got there to when they're leaving. They seem, not everybody, but a lot of them seem happier and able to deal with their traumas more and, stuff like that. So there was hope. And then by the time I left, I felt a lot better. However, I had a lot more work to do after I left there that I didn't realize. And I still do that work today, but it's getting much easier. And I'm feeling like a person I've never felt like in my life now.
We kind of talk when you're in treatment, you're like in a bubble, and then you get out of that bubble, and then you got the real life world that you got to use the tools that they taught you. How hard was that coming home and adjusting to that life?
Yes. So coming home, man, I was happy to come home. I wanted nothing more than to come home and see my wife and my dog. So she picked me up at the airport, came home, everything was good. And I swear to God, it wasn't 6 hours later. I was right back in the same headspace I was at 28 days earlier. I did something that upset her. In turn, it upset me. And then we got back in the same kind of argument we had right before I left there. And I was like, at that point, I felt very defeated. Like everything I had done was for nothing. And that it wasn't appreciated, the work I had done. wasn't the case. That's how I felt at the time.
Sure.
So I was like, well, I learned a lot, but it doesn't seem to be helping at the moment. So I started doing more therapy with therapists, and that was okay, but it was just the same thing over and over. Come in, tell me what's wrong. Okay, here's how you cope with it. Until finally my therapist ended up selling her practice. So that compelled me to find a new one. She wanted me to just see the person that bought her practice, but instead I started doing some research, and I ended up finding this other therapist who does a completely different kind of therapy. She works on healing your nervous system physically. Because as I've learned for myself, most of my reactions were my nervous system protecting me from my entire life of different traumas and being treated a certain way. It was doing what it's supposed to do. However, you don't know that. You don't realize that. You don't understand that. So it protects you by using different emotions like anger, stuff like that. I was an angry person for a long time. And let me tell you, that's not a fun place to be.
That does it for the first half of our show today. Let's take just a moment and check in with Melissa for our mental health tip for this week.
Hey guys, my name is Melissa, and today I'll be bringing you the mental health tip. Today's mental health tip focuses on what self-care can be. So I understand that's kind of broad because self-care could be anything. Every person differs a little bit when it comes to what works best for them. So a couple people might not be very good at asking for help. So maybe that means for you, it's asking for a little more help than what you're used to, even if it's around home. Spending time alone. Oftentimes our job puts us in situations where we're constantly around people, and then we come home to more people. So maybe that looks like going and taking a walk for 30 minutes by yourself, or bringing your dog along. It could also be just going to a coffee shop and grabbing some coffee and sitting outside or reading a book. Some other ways that we can continue to take care of ourselves are trying new things. Sign up for a cooking class or invite some of your buddies from the station, or your crew, and y'all go do something that's adventurous, whether it's whitewater rafting and you haven't been yet. Something that's different than the environment that you're constantly in. Self-care can be sleeping. If you're not sleeping, maybe it's time to figure out what works best for you. Do you need some blackout curtains? A loud fan at home? It's simple and small things like that we can become more aware of that are going to help us best in the long run. So I would encourage you to talk to some people around you that know you really well, because they may also be able to tell you some self-care routines that they do that could help you build yours. All right, guys, thanks for today, and back to you, Skip.
I tell you, always in that rage, and I remember being like that. But I remember when you went to that therapy and we were talking about the nervous system, and I was like, it's over my head. I'm in my backyard. Neighbor I hardly ever talked to. Lived there all my life. We just didn't talk. Came up and started talking to me. He worked at a prison, and he was telling me the same thing what he did with prisoners about the nervous system. He was going all that, and I go, it helped me understand that more, just like you have. So going to that different time of therapy and stuff, how's that helped you out as far as have your relationship with your wife, your family, and life?
That therapy's been life changing. I made some big decisions though too. I have stopped communicating with my family, my parents, and my siblings. A lot of the trauma in my life is the result of them. Not that it's their fault, but it is what it is. My life is much easier if they're not in it. And my relationship with my wife has become what I've always wanted it to be. We're very close, and we get along much better now. We don't get in the kind of fights we used to getting. I don't spin up and get all raged out like I used to. I can actually listen to her now and hear what she's actually saying and understand it and be there for her instead of just getting pissed off and feel like she's blaming me for everything. But she really wasn't. I just took it that way forever. So being able to actually recognize what the feelings really are and what they're supposed to do has made a huge difference. Like my anxiety, I used to have horrible anxiety, and now it's rarely there anymore. I had a good EMDR session a couple weeks ago, and since then I've been feeling amazing. Things aren't bothering me. I can talk to people. If there's a dispute about something, we can just talk about it. It doesn't have to be it's your fault, my fault. Let's just figure it out. Life is so much better when you're nice to people.
Sure. And in case anybody out there don't know what EMDR or brain spotting, it desensitizes from that trauma. You can look it up, and there's the words. It's you know what the abbreviation for it is, Chris?
I honestly don't. I just know something with your eye movement and how it connects your brain and your nervous system. There's a whole science behind it.
Sure.
It does work, at least for me.
I tell you, I was when they were going to do it with me, I thought this ain't going to work. And then I got up from the chair. I go, what just happened?
Yeah, it's literally, she kept asking me, she's like, well, how are you feeling now? I'm like, I actually feel really good. And she's like, well, what do you see? I go, I don't see any of the stuff I saw 10 minutes ago. Like, it's not even there anymore. It can kind of wipe away bad feelings and memories. It's weird. You can still remember, but you can't picture it anymore.
Yeah,
in your mind.
Exactly. Chris, I'm fortunate that we're friends, and I seen you go through a whole lot of different things, but about a year and a half ago, something happened, or longer, whenever it was. When I commented on the back of your head, I said, man, that looks better.
Yeah. So last year, in February again, February's been a tough month for me in the last few years. But last year in February, I started feeling something on the back of my head, like a little bump, and it was kind of itching. And I asked my wife to look at it because she cuts my hair. She says, well, you got that birthmark there. So I can't see it or whatever. She says, well, go ahead. She says, you got your work physical coming up. She says, ask the doctor. So I mentioned to the doctor the physical. He looked at it, and his reaction was pretty alarming. He kind of freaked out. He's like, hey, you got to get that removed, like, now. I'm like, I told him, I said, I can't see that, right? I don't know what I have to have removed. So he says, we got a huge mole back here. So again, I can't see it. So he took some pictures of it for me and showed it to me. I said, okay. So I went home, made an appointment with a dermatologist, went to work the next day, straight to the dermatologist from work. And he looked at it. He says, yeah, that's not good. So he removed it. He says, I'll send it in for biopsy. So, okay. At this point, I'm still not thinking anything bad. I just got a mole removed. 2 days later, I get the results in my phone. So I start to read them. So it can't be that bad. They just sent them to me on my phone. Well, as I open it, the phone's ringing, and it's the doctor. So he goes, I just wanted to catch you before you read your results. I said, I was just starting to. He goes, they're not good. I said, okay. He goes, you have melanoma. He goes, it's bad. He goes, it's very deep. He goes, my team from the University of Chicago will be calling you, the oncology team. I said, okay. Well, they started calling, and they were being very, very polite and very concerned. And after about a day of it, I told my wife, I said, I'm not sure if I'm taking this seriously enough. I said, these doctors really seem to care about what's going on with me. I said, I think it's something more than what I think it is. And she's like, well, she goes, no, they said you have melanoma. She goes, that's cancer. I called work. I said, hey, I had this thing removed from my head. I'm going to be off a couple of weeks because I got an open wound. A couple of weeks turned into 7 months. I had to have 2 major surgeries to remove all the cancer in the margins. And because it was such a deep, big tumor, they took a lot of my scalp out. And I had a probably about, 3-inch diameter spot on my head with no hair or anything because they had cut all that scalp out of me. So that was to remove the cancer. So they take that out, you do scans, they confirm they got it all. And then there's the reconstruction. I have to reconstruct my head. And they had a couple options, I guess, and they were going to do a skin graft, which was going to leave a massive mark on the back of my head with no hair and like divot and all this. It was going to look bad. I went in for that surgery because that's what they decided they were going to do because it was such a large spot. They didn't think they could do it any other way. But the surgeon I had, he looked at me that night. He goes, I can do this different procedure. He goes, and it'll be a lot better for you in the end. That's fine. Well, that procedure was much more invasive than the skin graft. We were supposed to have the skin graft and go home that night. Instead, the surgery ended up being 5 hours long, and we spent 2 nights in the hospital. And my poor wife was with me. She had no clothes or anything because she was planning to take me home that night. But she stayed there with me the entire time. They reconstructed my head, and then I had, a lot of healing to do. So I made it back to work. I've been working since November or October last year. Things have been going good, and they're getting better and better as we go. I'm getting back to where I was before all the cancer and everything, because that did knock me down quite a bit physically. Took me a while to get back to being able to do my hobbies and stuff the right way. So I'm there now, and now I'm starting to enjoy life. I got a year left to work, then I'm going to retire, and I'm looking forward to that because we're going to move out of state. So I am truly blessed and lucky to have been able to beat this cancer. The oncologist was overwhelmed that it didn't spread because he thought for sure it was going to be in a lot of places based on the size of the tumor. And it didn't spread anywhere. So I have one treatment left on April 9th. That'll be my last immunotherapy treatment. Started those a year ago, and still cancer free. I have another scan on April 9th as well. I'm hoping that still comes back as cancer free. So as of right now, I'm kind of on top of the world. I've overcome this mental health issue and beat cancer after that. So doing pretty good.
I tell you, just seeing you and your wife grow and work out the things you need to work out, and then you, on top of that, you getting cancer, then seeing you do peer support for the Worldwide Peer Support, being the RIT team, helping people get the treatment, and helping your own department guys, talking to them. Man, you're a miracle. I'm just saying, from where you came from, just what I seen, and where you're at now, it's just amazing.
I can tell you I wouldn't be here without people like you in my life and other people that I've met through my experiences. You guys are all an inspiration to me. I know everybody has got stuff they go through, and I know it's nice to have somebody there to talk to. So yeah, I'm available for anybody that's struggling to talk to me. I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to try and fix them, but I will get them to the help they need to get to. And I can listen. I've been there. I can understand and empathize with where they're at, and I can explain to them what their options are and tell them, at least for me, it works. If you do this, if you do the work, you can get better.
Okay, Chris, you got 30 seconds. There's somebody sitting in a fire truck. They're either they're at a scene, or there's a police officer doing paperwork, and he's in that dark place. Or you got somebody in the military that just went on a mission and come back, and they're lost, like we were lost in that dark place. You got 30 seconds. What are you going to tell them?
It'll be okay. It's okay to not be okay. You're not alone. A lot of people going through it, and we can get you help.
Well, Chris, I tell you, I ask everybody this. Is there some kind of slogan or verse or something that when you're going through a tough time that kind of resonates in your mind that just kind of lifts you up a little bit? You got something like that?
It's okay not to be okay.
There you go.
You know what? When you're feeling like the world is against you, just remember, there's a lot of people feeling like that. The world's not against you. You're against yourself, really. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that weigh in on you and make it hard. However, there's ways to deal with all that, and a lot of it is just understanding why you're feeling the way you feel and addressing that, as opposed to just getting angry and trying to cope with it like that. Because what I've learned is lashing out with all that rage and everything, that's just coping. That's just projecting your hurt on somebody else so they know how bad you're hurting. And that just causes problems, because then you're hurting them, so now they're hurt too. Then you got clashing. The right way is to be able to recognize what you're going through and understand why you're feeling that way.
Sure.
And that honestly makes everything a lot easier.
Well, Chris, thanks again. We really appreciate you sharing your story. And if anybody wants to contact Chris, go on to the burnoutpodcast.org. That's burnoutpodcast.org. And you can send us a message and we can connect you with Chris. Also, the Burnout Network, we do a support meeting every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you want to jump on there, our good friend Jeff, he facilitates that group. And then the Worldwide Peer Support does groups every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. So jump on. You can go to worldwidepeersupport.org and jump on those.
Yeah, I've been on those meetings, at least the Worldwide Peer Support ones, and they're very helpful. There's a lot of people on there that you'll find you'll have similar experiences with and relate to, and maybe even help.
Well, everybody, you heard it from Chris. We appreciate you, Chris, coming on, and just want to let everybody know, when you go home tonight, shut your phone off, shut your scanner off, and get some sleep. Thank you.